And I bring that up first because so many landlords say, oh, no, we always get a personal guarantee. You got to have it. And so many tenants, if they don't know better, that's like, well, okay, I got to do this. This is what you have to do to get into business. Well, no, it's not.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi, it's Rick Nuske here, and welcome to today's episode of the My Future Business Show. It's going to be a wonderful call today. I am on the line with Craig Melby from leasesmart.com. How are you, Craig?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, look, it's wonderful to have you here, and we're going to be talking about some very important advice, which I'm going to let Craig tell you a little bit about himself. Now, Craig, I often allow some time to get to know you more personally. Could you tell us a little bit about what you like doing when you're not working?
When I'm not working, that's hard to imagine. I actually do like traveling, and I
Mhm.
like getting out into the woods. I have a home in Florida and another home up in the mountains of North Carolina, and so I kind of follow the weather and the seasons. And so I just kind of enjoy getting out and about when I'm
Yeah,
not traveling to some exotic places.
it's nice to be able to follow the weather, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, getting out of the Florida heat in the baking summer
Yeah.
is a beautiful thing. Or
Yeah.
getting out of the freezing cold in the winter, that's a beautiful thing too.
Yeah. It's got to be just right. Bit like porridge,
Yep,
eh?
that's right. That's right. This way I only need to own one sweater. What could be better?
Now, look, we're going to be sharing all of your details a little bit later on, and we'll go into some depth about these topics. But Craig's core mission is helping businesses prosper by picking the best facilities and negotiating the best, most flexible lease terms. Now, for those who don't understand much about leasing, Craig, could we start from the fundamentals and share with them what leasing is all about?
Yes, I'd love to do that. I learned about this business when I used to invest in real estate and I represented landlords.
Hmm.
And then I would have tenants come in to rent some space. And I realized, oh my God, these are obviously commercial tenants.
Hmm.
And it's like they don't know a thing about what they're doing. I could have given them better rent, better terms, more landlord contribution money to fix up their space. I could have done so many things, but guess what? I represent the landlord. That would be dishonest if I was to do that.
Mm.
So I quickly decided that, it would be so much more fun to represent these business owners who need my help bad. And that's the way it's been ever since. I mean, I've literally never met yet a business owner renting office or retail space that knows what they're doing good enough not to be making some big mistakes. And some of these mistakes are life-changing.
Mm.
Just like if you've personally guaranteed the lease and then the economy falls, well, through no fault of your own, now you're not making the money you thought you would. Maybe you can't pay the rent. Well, if you've personally guaranteed the lease, you've lost everything. But if you haven't personally guaranteed the lease, then you can go to the landlord and say, hey, we're just going to close up shop. The economy's terrible and we'll be back someday.
Yeah.
And so that's just one of dozens of items that we were sure to address. And I bring that up first because so many landlords say, oh, no, we always get a personal guarantee. You got to have it. And so many tenants, if they don't know better, that's like, well, okay, I got to do this. This is what you have to do to get into business.
Mm.
Well, no, it's not. You don't have to sign that, or you can limit it in terms of time or dollars. It should expire after a certain amount of time or just all kinds of things. And so basically that standard landlord lease that they say, this is what everybody signs, just sign this one. No, 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 no. We make lots and lots of changes
Hmm.
which make your business life much safer and easier. Plus, hopefully, if we've done our job right, you're going to pay a whole lot less money for that space in many different ways.
Yeah, you can see how it would be very easy for the inexperienced business owner looking to lease some space to fall into the trap of thinking, "Hey, I can do this myself. How hard could it be?"
Yeah, I use those exact words to describe typical clients, that aren't typical clients. And you know what? It's kind of human nature because when they call on the sign, say that's hanging in the shopping center window or
Hmm.
hanging in front of an office building,
Hmm.
they that for lease sign, they call on that where they're going to be talking to a super nice person, really smart, probably even attractive. Nothing wrong with all those things, and that person is smart and honest and attractive and wonderful. But, like it was with me earlier, their job is to rent the space to the best terms possible for the landlord. So they cannot be honest and give you the best possible deal. And they certainly can't tell you about other space elsewhere that would be a better fit for you. So it's just a minefield if you do this all by yourself, thinking, well, this nice person, they're super nice, everything will be fine. It's not.
They have a vested interest, don't they?
Of course, yeah, there'd be a huge conflict of interest. It's their very honesty that prevents them from giving the tenant or the business owner the best possible deal. They can't do it. So the business owner needs to get a tenant rep or a tenant advisor or a lease negotiator or somebody. And by the way, attorneys can do this to some degree, but they don't even like to. They don't want to negotiate the business points of a lease. I have found
Hmm.
they want to do a legal review of the lease, but they love it when all the business points have already been negotiated, and now they can just do what they do best, which is go over the lease from a legal standpoint.
And this is where you step in and you do all of these things. I'd love to know more about your, step-to-step process so that we can educate the My Future Business audience today.
Yeah, well, and I'm very happy to do it. I'll spill all the beans and tell you all the things you need to look for. I don't have a checklist in front of me, but I do it so often. I'll just kind of imagine
Yep.
going down the lease from top to bottom and what some of the big items are that everybody seems to miss.
Hmm.
And of course, I've already touched on one, and that would be, who is the tenant? I've seen leases where you think you're leasing, your company is leasing the space, but the landlord has you as the tenant, you personally. Well, you don't want that.
Hmm.
You want it in the name of an entity. And now if you have other stores, for instance, or other offices, you have to decide, do you want to use a separate entity for each and every lease in case something goes wrong and you can walk away from that location? Or if there's a lawsuit or something, somebody trips and falls and sues you for breaking their back or something, then you have some protection there. You can walk away. So the very first thing is, have you put some thought into who is going to be the tenant? And that's something that truly you would want to speak more to your lawyer and your CPA about. But it's an item that I make sure that they've thought about. The next thing when you go down the lease is there's this very innocuous little clause in there that it sounds reasonable at first. The landlord says, okay, you've agreed, you've inspected the premises and you're taking it as is, blah, blah, blah. And that right there is like, no, no, no. First of all, we didn't probably inspect it real carefully with all the different inspectors you could pay. And I'm not taking it as is. So you need to add a few words in there. After the as is, you would put comma, subject to um, building code violations and hidden defects for which the landlord will remain responsible. And that few words there, and again, check with your attorney. He'll have his or her own specific language they want to use, but you get my meaning. That language has saved clients of mine thousands and thousands of dollars because there'll be something wrong with the property that you didn't know was there. The landlord didn't even know it was there. But if you've said, I've inspected it and I'm taking it as is, the landlord and the judge would say, hey, you're a sophisticated person. You agreed to take it as is. That's your problem. And just as a quick little example, one client of mine, they took a little space and then discovered, oh, wait, the exit lights aren't working, which is a code violation. There's all kinds of wiring running in up above the ceiling tiles, which you got to have all that removed, and that's time consuming and expensive. It was going to be thousands of dollars. And when I called the lady and asked her, my client, after the lease was done, hey, how's it going in that new space? You open yet? You get it built out? Oh, my God, all these problems, it's going to cost us thousands.
Mm.
I said, hold on, wait a minute. Let me look up the lease and I'll call you right back. So I looked in there and we had the magic words in there. And I said, hey, ma'am, this is not your problem. You need to send a nice letter to the landlord that says, hey, Here's what's wrong with the property. I'm sure you didn't know about it, but go ahead and fix it as soon as you can. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
so save your thousands of dollars.
There are lots of things to be considered in terms of defects and liability sides and who does what and when do they do it, and the time frames in which they need to do it. When we're starting to look into this, what's some of the key things that you need to find out first from your clients?
Well, of course, I always want some background. What are you going to be doing in the space? How long you've been looking? What do you like about it? What you don't? Have you checked all these things? And so I get some background because many, oddly enough, most of my deals by far are with clients who I've never met, with properties I've never seen.
Mm.
But because I'm doing it all over the country, and actually I'm part of an organization that is global. But all the issues are so many times the same type of issue.
Yeah.
So, but just I don't know if I'm answering your question spot on, but the first thing you want to do is give yourself enough time. You don't want to start looking when if you need the space 30 days from now, you're way too late. It takes time to build out the space, and to do that, you need to get permits. To get permits, you need plans. And before that, you need to negotiate the deal. And some of these big landlords, they only meet in their leasing committee once every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it can go, just the lease negotiation could go for months. And these big companies, they don't care. It takes a while, and they expect that. So most people don't start the process early enough. And then from there, we go on with all the various terms. Another big one, just as an example, would be the lease commencement. Some people think that when they sign the lease, okay, it's yours, go ahead and do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, there's the lease commencement, and then there's rent commencement that is after lease commencement. You need to have some time built in there to fix up the property, make it the way you want it. Well, and then after the rent starts, there might even be some free rent period or discounted rent period or lots of things. So, and then before the lease starts, before lease commencement, you still might get some free rent there too. I signed the lease today, but you know what? The lease doesn't start for 60 days. But in the meantime, I have access to the property to do my planning and permitting and, pricing and this and that. And so you really don't want to be paying rent on a space until you're making money on a space, is the way I like to look at it. And a lot of people don't know that. They don't know better.
So, given that the My Future Business audience are beginner entrepreneurs and existing small to medium business owners, what obligations do they need to be aware of as actual business owners in terms of their own personal insurance, their ability to fund the lease? So, are there any requirements on the business owner to provide that sort of evidence?
Well, you bring up a good point. The landlord needs to be sure that you're going to pay the rent.
Mm-hmm.
So they'd rather you have been in business for a while, and or have a lot of funds, assets, a lot of experience. And so you have an obligation really if you're a startup, you'll be needing to show them your business plan and your financial statements, and show them that you can afford to do what you're doing. And you might need to set aside some money for the downtimes. And then you do need deposits. And a typical lease, you would need to put down first month's rent, last month's rent, and security at lease signing. Now, we negotiate some of those things away, but that's what's typically asked for. And then probably the space isn't going to be just the way you want it. And it's very likely you have to put some money into that, and maybe it'll cost more than you expected. So, you just got to go in with your eyes open and be very careful about everything. And hopefully it'll come out okay.
That's very sage advice. Now, I can see within the last 30 days alone, you've covered, from Washington, D.C., Asheville, Atlanta, New York City, Dallas, San Francisco, Chicago, and the list goes on and on and on. It's long and complex. Are the requirements from place to place different?
Not too much. There are some uses that have slightly different terms, like percentage rent in some restaurants, that type of thing. Or in California compared to New York, California would they quote their rental rate in per square foot per month, where most places do it per year. So you just at first you might be shocked if you one way or the other if you see that number you don't realize.
Yep.
So everybody has their own ways. And then it's funny too. I've been in the business long enough, so if I don't understand something, it's not a dumb question. So I don't mind asking the dumb questions,
Yep.
which sometimes it'll be, all right, the landlord says, yeah, we're going to provide the space in a vanilla shell condition.
Yep.
And I'm going to say, okay, I understand. How do you define a vanilla shell? What's included? Because there's raw shells and raw dark shells and this and that. And I still run across tenants sometimes that have been looking at a space and they go, yeah, it's amazing. The landlord is going to give me $20 a square foot to finish out the space.
Mm.
And they're so thrilled about that. Well, guess what? You're going to spend $50 a foot to finish out that space before it's open and ready for business.
Yep.
And they can't imagine,
Yeah. The thing that's coming through for me, and this is what the My Future Business show is primarily about, is having a conversation with the right people at the right time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and a lot of people, stick their head in the sand and say, I can do this, and I encourage them, and I think that's wonderful that they believe that. But there are people in the industry who have had, many decades of experience, such as yourself, Craig. So, where can people find you? Are you just online, or do you do live events, or what happens with you?
Well, actually, I do speak at some national conventions that are, brick and mortar oriented,
Mm-hmm.
and talk to them about leasing. And I speak where I can, but people find me through my website or referrals, or
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to say where it all comes from. But my biggest challenge, quite frankly, and I think your listeners need to know, most people think they can do it themselves, and I've never met one that could. And just so they don't feel bad, I've had clients that are geniuses, just total titans of industry, way smarter than me,
Yep.
but yet they don't know the leasing business. They don't know the difference between a gross lease and a net lease and a full service lease and all these other terms. They're just like babes in the wood. So, and that's why half of my clients, they'll call me after they've already started negotiations, sometimes after they've received the lease. And then they go, hey, I need somebody to look at this. But, and sometimes they'll use a lawyer, and that's totally fine. And I always recommend that.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes they just want somebody that does this all day, every day. Say, are these business points fair? Is this working out? And I'm always shocked, when I look over a lease, I don't know what to expect. I'm always expecting, hey, this will probably be just fine. And then I see stuff in there that says amazing.
Yep.
And so sometimes maybe just even a third party looking over a deal, two heads are better than one, so to speak, helps you to see things more clearly. I was doing a deal, I'm still in the middle of it, last week, where the developer was building the building and said, okay, well, when I'm done with the building, then you agree to take it. I'm going to tell you when it's done and you'll take it. And so I asked my client, I said, what are you going to get? What is that building made of? Well, I have in mind it's going to be this, that, the other thing. And I go, wait a minute, you have in your mind what it's going to be?
Mm-hmm.
Does the lease say anything about the specifications of the building that you're going to be getting? No. Well, don't you think it should be in there? Yes, I do. I guess you're right. I need to know exactly. I said, I want to see a work letter attached to this that talks about, everything, including the size and shape and style of the doors,
Yep.
maybe even the door knobs and the hinges. Some of these things are important. And so it can get very detailed. And I'm not making this up. I've seen it where it did include the type of hinge on the door and the doorknob and the blah, 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 blah,
Very
so
specific
that's
detail.
important.
Oh
yeah.
One of the things I'm getting from this call today, Craig, and it's wonderful. It's thank you so much for sharing it with our audience. Is that you do not know what you do not know, and it's important to find people like yourself, Craig. I'd love to spin around to your authorship. Can you tell us a little bit about why you started writing books on these types of topics?
Well, I've always wanted people to not make mistakes. I've always liked sharing with people, as I think we all do. We all like helping other people. And I can still remember years and years ago, it was a young couple came in to rent that space from me. and they're the sweetest, nicest people that wanted to open up some sort of shop,
Mm-hmm.
and they were clueless. And then since then, I've talked to so many people that make so many mistakes, and they're serious. I mean, like, you might get along with your husband or wife really fine when times are good, but if you run out of money, you know, can cause
different set of circumstances, isn't it?
yeah, that can cause divorce real easily.
Mm-hmm.
And just so many problems that were avoidable, totally avoidable. So yes, I wrote the book about picking the best site. And it's funny, some of the stuff I mentioned, to some people, some of the things feel common sense. But guess what? I've seen each and every one of those mistakes made time and time again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, you got to pick out the right site. You want to be careful about competition, visibility, parking, demographics. I'm doing a deal now where some people are really excited about this closed restaurant. They're gonna buy the space that's already built out, and I zoomed out with Google Earth to look at the site,
Mm-hmm.
and all I see surrounding it are cow pastures. It's like, there's nobody in that area, Who do you think's going to come in and eat at your restaurant?
Mm-hmm.
So, demographics, and of course I can run demographic reports and, income levels and density levels and just all kinds of things. And then you can compare one site to the next and make a smarter choice. And people just get over enthusiastic about their business, and enthusiasm's good, but, too much could, the positive thinking can also get you in trouble. You need to be careful.
I love how this dovetails into marketing for business owners, because it clearly does.
Yeah.
What's the old saying? Location, location, location.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you get this marketing noise. I often, with a background in marketing, often driving down the road, and I'm thinking to myself, look at all that noise. Look at all that noise. How could anybody ever cut through all the noise? You see your billboards left and
Right.
right. How do they
Right.
how do they notice you? It must be a very interesting challenge for you.
Well, it is, and it has just changed recently, because it used to be visibility and location, being on the corner of Main and Main or whatever, was very important. And still, other elements like population density of the right income level, the right makeup of your type of client,
Mm-hmm.
and parking and ingress and egress, all those things are important. But it's not as important nowadays is the visibility. Why? Because when people come to a town, they pop onto Yelp and they look for a coffee shop.
Yep.
And, it could be down the back alley, and that only adds to its charm,
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've seen it myself in my own town, where some place will pop up and the old fashioned site selector in me goes, oh my God, they'll never make it. Are they ever fools?
Mm.
And then the place is booming. Well, because they got a new way of marketing. They got a lot of their friends and family and everybody, let's get in here. Let's rate us on Yelp. And now people come to town, if it's a tourist town, and they pop in there. Hey, I'm feeling like a pizza. Let's see where the pizza places are. Well, look at this place. It's got 75-star ratings. We're going there.
Yeah.
And, it can be in a back alley nowadays. So that's interesting.
I can see how you have your finger on the pulse, and that you'd have to move with the times in terms of all of these types of things. So I will put your details and your number below this call so that people can make contact with you at leasesmart.com. Craig, I've learnt a lot myself, and I'm sure our listeners have learnt a lot. And thanks again for being on the My Future Business Show.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's been fun having you on the call with us today. Now click on that big red subscribe button and make sure you leave us a comment, share us with your friends, and join the growing list of leading entrepreneurs who have enjoyed their time on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews.